Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it is a great honour on behalf of the Liberal Party of South Australia, on behalf of the opposition, to wholeheartedly support the motion that has been put forward by the Premier this afternoon, and to wholeheartedly support each of his sentiments towards the Ukrainian people, and to support each of the initiatives that the Government of South Australia has put into place to support those Ukrainians who have found their way to safety in the state of South Australia. We wholeheartedly support this motion in an act of bipartisanship, and for those in the gallery today, I would like to emphasise that that is a common thing in South Australia, not the rarity. We grieve with the many Ukrainians here today. We grieve with the many Ukrainians who live in South Australia, whether they have lived here for a number of generations or whether they have found themselves perhaps unexpectedly living in South Australia as a consequence of the current conflict. We acknowledge the immense personal consequences of this aggression which has come as the result of Vladimir Putin's completely unprovoked actions. We acknowledge the 40,000 deaths, the more than 90,000 casualties that we know of, and the more than 14 million people who have been displaced. Displaced to neighbouring countries, displaced to other places around the globe. And we also acknowledge the countries that have taken perhaps a more significant share of those displaced people, and I particularly think of Poland and the Polish people and what they have done through this time. We honour the victims of this horrific invasion, but we also extend the hand of friendship and the unwavering support to those who are left behind, those who are uncertain as to the fate of family members and who every night go to bed worrying about the news that they might hear when they wake up in the morning. As the Premier said, Vladimir Putin was expected to roll into Ukraine and take that country within a matter of weeks. That hasn't been the case. That is a tremendous testament to the resilience, the willpower, the solidarity of the Ukrainian people, and of course the phenomenal leadership of a man that many of us had not even heard of as little as 12 months ago, President Zelensky, and those who support him. This has been an example of a relatively small nation compared to its aggressor, standing up, holding its own, and communicating to the world and its allies, and building allies as it has gone, that this sort of behaviour cannot and will not be tolerated. I think the message of President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people is quite clear, that if they fall, who will be next? And that is something each and every one of us, particularly those who occupy positions of privilege in government, such as the Premier and myself, and the people elected to this chamber, need to bear at the forefront of our minds. Our message today is that Australia is in absolute united solidarity with the Ukrainian people. Over the last 12 months since that illegal invasion, Australia has committed $655 million worth of assistance to Ukraine, including $475 million in military aid and the provision of 70 army trainers. But it's not just about financial support. I hope that each and every one of those who make up the Ukrainian community in South Australia have felt the warmth of partnership, the loving embrace, both literal and metaphorical, that the South Australian people have extended to the growing Ukrainian community here. Australia may provide military equipment, it may provide vehicles and training, but humanitarian support, both on the ground in Ukraine and in South Australia and the nation at large is a critical part of the way that we can support you. In South Australia, we have welcomed Ukrainians with open arms by providing visas to Ukrainian nationals, and several thousand of these have been granted across the nation of Australia. We are proud to have our Ukrainian community so strongly represented here today, and I want to particularly thank the Association of Ukrainians in South Australia under Frank Fersenko's leadership for the way that you have worked so hard to raise awareness of the situation in your homeland, to teach us about your culture, to spread the message, not only of the military invasion, but of how South Australia can stand up and how South Australians, both governments and communities, can help. Frank, to you and your association, thank you. Mr. Speaker, democracy is something that we take for granted here in South Australia. There's no doubt about that. It's a good thing that we can take it for granted. But across the world, democracy is only enjoyed by just over 50% of our planet's population. And democracy across the globe is in decline. It's not on the rise. So we need to cleave onto our democratic principles, both here in South Australia, but we also need to stand up for democratic principles when we see it under threat, under aggression in other parts of the world. The Premier and I can have a conversation. We can pick up the phone and talk to one another. We can walk out of here and have a joke together. There are many, many places in the world that that's not possible. So let's be thankful for what we have here, but let's do our bit to support the Ukrainian people at this time, to push back against that aggressor, to give you the confidence that this battle can be won, the many battles can be won, and that you have the solidarity of the 1.7 or so million people in South Australia, yes, the 25 point something million people in Australia, yes, but actually you have allies in every corner of the globe rooting for you, that your people very soon will be free again to go about their business, to feel safe in their beds at night, to celebrate your culture, and to once again go back to providing the many things that you provided to the globe, whether that's food or fibre, whether it's natural resources, whether it's the stories and the traditions of your culture that you have spread across the planet. Thank you for all of that. Let us cleave on to the values of democracy. Let us fight for Ukraine, whether that be in a physical sense or whether it be by coming together in resilient solidarity with you all. We stand with you, Ukraine, and as this motion states, and as I say, in complete solidarity with the Premier, we will continue to do so for as long as it takes to ensure peace and independence is returned to the Ukrainian people. Slava Ukraini.